Glance to the left in case anyone can say no yet. Okay, cool. Right, I'll just flick to the next slide. Just to let everyone know that this will be recorded, so do let me know if there's any issues with that. Cool, so the agenda today, so what we have done in the previous sprint, so pretty much exactly the same agenda as last time, but obviously different updates. A research update from Steph, so we're going to be focusing on the citizen user research insights today, and then what next and any questions. Hopefully that sounds all right to everyone. This is what we played back in the last show and tell, so nothing new, but I always find it useful to play back what the project actually is for those that kind of don't join and aren't day-to-day involved. I won't read through it, but it'll be sent out as part of the recording if you do want to kind of look back at that, unless anyone wants to stop me now. Great. Okay, so what have we been up to in the previous 2 weeks then? So Steph has been very busy conducting citizen and hub provider interviews, which we've now completed as of yesterday, I think, Steph.
Yay!
So a line has been drawn under that as of yesterday, so lots and lots of time has been spent doing that and kind of analysing the data onto the second point.
25 interviews I've done. So yeah, it's all over now.
And some double interviews as well, right? Which always make things slightly more interesting. Yeah. Cool. And then, so beginning the analysis of both sets of the interview data, but primarily the focus has been on the citizen side this sprint, and forming those insights and findings, which Steph will play back in a couple of minutes. And then procurement. So we have been working with procurement, Kershaw. So Warren unfortunately had to join an emergency meeting, so couldn't come to the show and tell today. But Gwyn, if you do want to catch up on that, please do let me know. We had a session with the team on Monday where we went through what the route to market is currently looking like. There's a lot more to do, and we've taken your insight and feedback on the private angle as well. So we'll feed that back, and Warren's kind of working on that at the moment. So yeah, stuff is still ticking along. The procurement stuff, I think, needs a bit more focus next sprint, but we've been working, on the route to market. Cool, and then I will pass over to you, Steph, if that's all right.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So yeah, so as I just said, 25 interviews, that's obviously citizens and hub providers. So in terms of, I'll just focus on citizens in this session because I did the hub providers a couple of weeks ago. So we recruited 14 Welsh citizens. We've got 8 female and 6 male, which always tends to happen with research. You always tend to get more females than males. I have no idea why. We got split, sort of similar split, with 6 public sector and 8 private sector. Location, so we had a good, I think, quite a good mix of urban, suburban and rural. I think we had as well one of the areas that you mentioned, Gwyneth, where they're sort of heavy Welsh speakers, which was quite good. I think there were a couple from there. And disabilities as well, I think it did quite well, although it probably doesn't look like it. It's actually quite good to get 5 participants with sort of disabilities, so that was quite good. And we had 3 Welsh speakers as a first language. That would become quite interesting actually as I go through the slides. Oh, so I'm looking at I'm looking at yours, aren't I? Can you go on to the next slide, Hannah? So yeah, so these are the insights for the citizens. Obviously these aren't all the insights, these are just the insights from, I've analysed the first 6 citizen interviews, and these are just the main insights that have emerged from the data. So the reasons participants would use a hub, it was funny actually, because lots of them didn't even know what co-workspace and hubs were, so I had to explain to them what they were. And then once I'd explained, some of them sort of said, oh, okay, yeah, I know what you mean, a friend has used them or something. And then a few of them sort of said at the start, oh, no, I don't think they'd be of use to me. But then once the session progressed and I sort of talked about the facilities and what the hubs were offering, quite a lot of them sort of said, actually, this would be really useful for me. I could use it for X, Y, and Z. So just going through the slide at the moment, the teacher, she was quite interesting actually, because you wouldn't think a teacher would need to use a hub, because obviously they're in school teaching all the time, but they're not apparently. So she has she does admin one day every other week, and she said it would be really good for her to be able to go to a hub and work in, well, just have a quiet space, because she said sometimes she has to do it at school and it's quite noisy and she gets interrupted all the time. So she was saying that using the hub or having access to a hub would be great for her, because she could just go there and she could go quite early and do her admin. She's also got, as well, at home, she's got a really weak broadband connection, and she really struggled when lockdown was happening. She's often, when she was teaching from home, she often had to go to a friend or a relative's house to do her lessons because her broadbands are so bad. So she sort of thought these were great. There was a self-employed driver. She lived in Anglesey. She said that she probably wouldn't use it unless I think she had noisy dogs. So she said it would be quite useful to go to one in Anglesey to do all her accounts and invoicing. The accountant as well, she had a weak broadband connection at home. She was in Anglesey as well, so she said that would be really useful for her to be able to use a hub. Property landlord who was based in Colwyn Bay, he said that he would probably use it for company meetings and events, so to hire out a room for sort of half a day or a day. And then I spoke to an artist who lived in a rural area. She actually lived in a caravan, and she sort of makes craft things, sort of items, and sells them on Etsy. And if there are sort of what's called space maker areas and hubs where artists and craftspeople can sort of hire a room, she said that would be brilliant for her, because she doesn't have enough space in her caravan. So it was quite interesting that a lot of them said at the start, oh no, I don't think that would be of use to me, and then once the session progressed, they could see the value in it, which I thought was quite good. Can you go on to the next slide, Hannah? Okay. So out of all the various factors, the hub location is the most important factor, which probably isn't a surprise, in that most of the participants wanted to use a hub that was sort of near to their home, so they didn't have to travel far to it. So I think you can see that it's location first. That quote there, so it would probably be location first. I can see the pictures, they seem quite clear. That will become clear later on. I got the participants to have a look at an online workspace or booking portal, and just to get their feedback on it, on what worked and what didn't in their photos. So that's what they're referring to there. But yeah, they all said that location of the hub is the most important factor. Next slide, please, Hannah. Thanks. So given that location was the most important factor, they pretty much all of them, apart from I think a couple who were based in Cardiff, said that they would drive to a hub. The ones in Cardiff would walk or get a bus or public transport, and one of the participants said that if it was within cycling distance, they would like prefer to cycle there. So given that they all would drive to a hub, they expect the online booking portal to display whether there's a car park, if that car, how far away or near is the car park? Because quite a few of them said that they had quite a lot of, I suppose, bits and pieces that they needed to carry, particularly the teacher. She said that she carries quite a lot of stuff. So they need to know whether the car park is actually sort of next to the hub or whether it's a walking distance, and then whether there's any car park fees payable. So these sort of few slides here are the, I suppose, more content and maybe sort of the interactions that the online booking portal will need to display, so that users can make an informed choice as to which hub is most suitable for them, because all the hubs tend to be different with different facilities and rooms and spaces, etc. So, but overall, that the car parking and the fees and whether it's near to the hub, that is sort of quite a big insight in something that the user needs to know before they book something. So can you go to the next slide, please, Hannah?
Yeah, no problem, Steph. I'm just wondering, did anyone mention anything about other transport links? So car parks obviously important, but anything near a train station or kind of major cities, or is it just quite car focused?
No, it's literally just car parks, because most of them will have to drive, particularly the people in sort of the rural and suburban areas. And then I think a couple of the sort of the Cardiff-based ones said if it's near a bus stop, that's fine. And then obviously sort of public transport, or they walk. But no one, okay. And no one had electric vehicles either. So there was, I don't think anyone mentioned either getting on a train. It was all either driving or walking or cycling.
Yeah, okay, cool, thank you.
So again, on these, I'll actually show you those because it's mentioned here. So this was the booking site that I use. You've got a photo and some blurb about the space. But they all, even before mentioning, even before going onto this website, they all mention. Sorry, I'm looking at my. I'm getting confused now because I've got my. I'm sorry. I'll ignore that. Yeah. So they all expected to see photos of the workspace, and they mentioned as well having some idea of where they could book. So I suppose, you know, if you're booking a flight and you want to reserve your seat, you can see the seats, can't you, in your plane, and you can sort of select the most suitable seat for you. I think that's what they were getting at, and they would like something like that for various reasons, such as, going back to the teacher, her work involves things like photos of her pupils and other sensitive data. She wouldn't want to be sitting at a shared table with lots of other people. She didn't say she needed sort of an individual room, but she would need a sort of desk on its own, so she could, I suppose, ensure that sort of data confidentiality relating to her pupils. There was another person that just sort of said, for sort of anxiety reasons, that they wouldn't feel comfortable sitting on a large desk with lots of other people, and they prefer to sit on their own. So if they don't know what the space is and where they're going to be sitting, I think they're going to struggle to book somewhere. So I think we need to make it really clear what type of space they have access to, and I suppose almost, yes, I suppose like a floor plan. There was a couple that said that they wouldn't want to use a hub if it was really, really busy, because they said it would probably be too noisy and they wouldn't be able to concentrate. So there's quite a few factors that users are looking for before they actually book a space in the hub. Someone else said, actually, one of the website which I got them to evaluate there were a couple of rooms that didn't look as if they had windows, and a couple said, they wouldn't be prepared to sit in a windowless office for the morning or afternoon, which I can't blame them. I don't think most people want to sit in a sort of windowless office. So there's quite a lot of things like that, which I don't think the hub providers are probably aware of just quite how sort of granular the user needs are. So I think we need to have some sort of conversations with the hub providers as to how they, I suppose, or how the system displays each of the hubs facilities and floor plan, etc. So we don't get users booking something that they end up sort of walking into and just saying, I can't work here, and sort of walking out. Also not knowing on the website or the booking portal whether a room has a window, and end up phoning the hub providers, because that's going to cause a lot of extra effort for the hub providers. So next slide, please, Anna. So I spoke to the participants about what they would expect to use if they were going to a hub once they were satisfied with the hub space. And these are the most sort of common items that they mentioned. So printing, which I've spoken to quite a few hub providers, and they said, oh no printing, we're going for paperless office. So yeah, so most of them ask for things like printing, scanner, copier, stationery. So not provided, but if they could purchase stationery there. Quite a few of them said power socket, so that they don't their laptop doesn't run out of power. A screen that they can plug their laptop into. A couple mentioned it'd be quite useful if they had access to a keyboard and mouse. The property landlord, he said a projector and large screen and whiteboard would be useful. And then they all mentioned as well that it would be useful if there were refreshments offered, which I think all the hubs do. They have a kitchenette, all of them, and then it varies. Some have cafes, so that's fine. And then obviously with any of these facilities that are offered, they want to know whether payment or there's any costs associated with it. So again, the booking portal will need to clearly state A, whether the hub provides any of these facilities, and then B, whether they charge for any of them, so everything's transparent. I've spoken to a couple of hub providers, and they've said that they're only providing literally a desk and a chair. I don't know whether that's going to be enough going forward, given what I've heard from these participants. So yeah. So next slide, please.
And I guess, Steph, it's this facility stuff is almost facilities of hubs and then facilities of the desk, because I've definitely been caught out where I've booked a desk in a remote working space and there hasn't been a power socket. And you kind of sit there on your laptop. I don't know if your laptops are like, yeah, you can book the big benches in some of them, and they're meant to be like collaborative spaces, and they don't really set themselves up for you to be there all day. It's like we'll drop in between, if you're on client site somewhere, you can drop in, rather than an 8-hour working day where you're sat there all day having to charge your laptop. So yeah, completely get why people have said that.
Yeah. So we had our 3 Welsh speakers, but so all 14 participants said that they would have a preference for using the booking portal in English. So I did ask one of the Welsh speakers, I think he was about the 10th one I'd spoken to, and I did say, everyone said English, why is this? His response was, well, everything you're doing online is in English. Why would you change and look at this site in Welsh? It wouldn't make sense. So that's what they said. But I'm sure there will be Welsh citizens who do want to use it in Welsh, but all the ones I spoke to just said English. So I don't know whether that insight's familiar to you. I don't. Obviously, this is my first Welsh project, so I don't know. But yeah, that's just the feedback from the 14 I spoke to. Next slide, please. So I mentioned to the participants that even though the hubs will be subsidised for, well, I suppose for public sector, they might have to pay online and claim back on expenses, or pay at the venue and claim back expenses. I spoke to a nurse actually, and she said that wouldn't work for her because as a nurse, they're not in the habit of claiming expenses for anything, and they couldn't see the nursing management team setting up a whole new business process so that nursing staff could claim back expenses. And there was a private sector participant who said that his management wouldn't be prepared to claim, to sort of pay expenses, and sort of have that added extra effort of all the whole sort of expenses administration. But I know that we haven't, I know Gwyneth, you've got your hands up there, I know we haven't finalised what's going to be happening with payment. So I think we discussed, didn't we, Gwyneth, about the payment and expenses.
Yeah, that's why I've got my hand up, really, just to reiterate. I mean, everybody will have a different way of paying, whether it's a reciprocal arrangement, expense arrangement. And these are the sort of things that obviously are helping with this discovery phase, is what people are thinking. But at the moment, a lot of organisations are still working that out, if at all. Some may get compensation. There's one particular local authority in Wales I know of that some of the employees get compensation, so that would come out of their own pocket, if you like, based on that compensation they get. So there are different models, so it's not just about expensing.
I know. I just because I spoke to a hub provider last week, a local council, and they were saying that they wouldn't even charge payment. They would, as we say, they would set up some sort of reciprocal agreement with other councils. But otherwise, you're just moving money around, aren't you? It doesn't make sense.
Yes, so it just, exactly. It depends on where you go, and that's the important part of this discovery phase, is how do you show that in a online booking system, if at all.
We did speak about that with quite a few of both hub providers and participants as to how, not even so much you would pay, but if a user is entitled to use a hub for free, how do we manage that? How do you know?
Exactly.
How do you manage that on the booking portal? Do they have like a voucher code? Is there some sort of an organisation code or something?
It may be a scalable solution that we have to be mindful of, but not ready yet. But we'll see. Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay. There's also, in terms of the payment, a couple of participants and hub providers mentioned about, I suppose not fraud, but if you've paid for if the council is providing subsidised places, how you ensure that only participants who are entitled to those spaces are using them and not doling them out to their mates or something. So there's that as well that sort of came up. But I'll speak about that in the providers' feedback.
Fab.
Okay. Last slide for me then, Hannah. Can you go on to the next one? Okay. So this is the slide that I went on originally. So this website, at the end of the interview, I asked the participants to essentially choose a workspace according to their needs using this website, which is it's pretty much the only one where you can do it without having to log in or be a member. So these are some of the photos and images and content that they display, and I just thought it was quite useful actually. This one of the dyslexic users, she really struggled with the visual design and the content. So if you see her quote, she says, "I'm dyslexic, so I struggle a little bit with text," and this find an address is the find an address on the website at the top. She just couldn't process it at all. The contrast is too bright, so the white and the black, which is ironic because that's what GDS uses, but it's quite difficult for dyslexic users. I think it's just too bright. And the text, the copy, is too high density, so she just couldn't really read it at all. Just want to see what else she said. The just the photo and everything. It was just, I think it's too high density and too smaller area. So I just thought that was quite interesting that she struggled with this design. So again, that's something else that you need to take into account. She did say that rather than having a white background, having maybe a light grey or a sort of a pastel colour enables her to read the text easier than it is using a bright white background. So I just thought that was quite interesting. So that's all for me. These are just the sort of first insights, because I've analysed 6 of the interviews. So these are just the insights from 6. I've got another 8 to do, so there'll be probably more insights as I progress. But it's just a sort of flavour of what I found already.
Perfect, thanks very much, Steph. I'll just cover off what we're going to do in the next 2 weeks, and then we'll just hand over to any questions. So as of Monday, we're going into our last 2 weeks of discovery, so the last sprint. So all focus really will just be on completing everything. So completing right, feeling worried. So completing all the analysis, building the user needs and the personas, and completing the discovery report. Haven't got that on there, but also covering off the procurement activity that we're kind of undertaking at the moment. So wrapping up everything essentially. And also getting some dates in for the final kind of feedback and presentation that we want to do as well. So yeah, we are very quickly coming to the end of discovery, so it's all about kind of wrapping stuff up now. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to come off mute if you want to put your hand up or use the chat box, whatever is the best way for you to ask. Feel free to do that. Just give it a couple of minutes.
Gwyneth, is the feedback, is that what you were expecting? Is there any surprises there?
You know, I thought it was really useful from our perspective. I don't know if you think so as well, Gareth. I think the questions I've got are a bit deeper, and I know that that's perhaps something we could do as part of our team.
Okay.
But things like the car use, you know, that's not one of our objectives in the policy. Is ideally depend on where the location of the hub is. But wouldn't it be interesting to know what kind of fuel type the car is, or whether it's electric, and you know, whether the facility of electric charging nearby a hub, for example, would be useful to users. So those sort of questions come out when you were explaining that, and I was quite surprised because I didn't think about that carrying things element, you know. With the teacher example, you know, if you've got a lot of things, how do you get there? And so I think that's something that we need to take away and discuss in our own policy area and see what that, you know, how we can, you know, look at the behaviour changes in some of these areas as well. And I really liked the fact that we talked about just the little things like, you know, I need a power socket when I turn up. You know, it's a bit like getting on a train and you've got a long train journey, and it's nice when you know, I think I'm delighted when I find a a power socket because I'm just about to run out. You know, I know,
as well, isn't it? You
and
can
all
charge
those,
your phone.
you know, and keep your laptop alive so you can just crack on and do your job and things like that. So I've found this really really useful, particularly on the disability side as well, which obviously we are all always mindful of, but the dyslexic and the anxiety side of things is something that we, you know, really need to be mindful of as we're building some of this towards this. So I'm really glad that you've managed to find you know, a good sample of people in this area at least. So yeah, no, I'm good. Anything else, Gareth, to add on that?
No, I agree with that. I mean, especially all that detail, and it does just make you think of any other kind of, you know, booking systems that you use, booking.com or whatever, where it will literally list every single thing on there. Is there a window? Is there a sock? You know, that sort of thing. It just shows the amount of detail that you'd have to have on it to prevent people from just actually phoning up and asking these questions.
Yeah.
Sort of defeating the object. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, I agree.
Even just
Really
desk location, you know,
Yeah.
I'm a bit like that. I like to sit, I'm very, you know, if I go into a restaurant, I know exactly what table I want, and I want my back towards a wall. You know, I'm a bit like that, and I'm partially sighted in one eye, so this white screen is very difficult for me. I don't like white because I've got quite a lot of floaters in my eye, so I get that kind of, you know, too much information on a screen. It, you know, because of my floaters rather than because of my, you know, I don't have dyslexia, so I'm very mindful of those sort of things as we build.
Yeah, it shows as well, I think, this user experience in designing interfaces. It's all about really tiny, small, granular details that can have a really big effect on a product. So not displaying some of those facilities, you just think not that important. Oh, you've just forgotten to add that we don't have power sockets. But that will necessitate someone probably phoning or just not using it. So it can have a really, that tiny, you know, 2 words could have an absolutely massive effect on the product as a whole. So that's essentially what user experience is. It's these tiny, tiny details that have wide range of effects on the service. So yeah.
I was going to ask Steph if anyone, your first insight was on location. Did anyone have any preference to? So I'm assuming that's location to home. So
so nearest to home.
Did anyone have any preference to like their current workspace and using it as more of like a drop-in thing that I was talking about earlier, or is it more like you would go there for the day and so it's close to your home and that's kind of more beneficial?
Going apart from the property landlord, he would use it for having sort of work meetings and events. He sort of like owned the company, so I'm presuming with directors and management, they would be using it for a different purpose than sort of the individuals.
Yeah, because I guess it comes with a different set of user needs, doesn't it? If you want it close to home and you're going there for the day, like the refreshments thing comes into it, like you fit on there and all that kind of stuff, rather than you just kind of in and out. Yeah, cool. Any other questions from anyone before we close the call? No. Okay. Gwyn and Gareth, I'm going to put some time in your diaries, if that's okay, just to cover off the kind of end of discovery and what that's going to look like and what you guys have in terms of availability for our kind of final presentation. And I think that's it. If you've got any other questions outside of the session, please feel free to reach out. I think, Jem, you've got the recording, so we can send that out to anyone. If you want to look back at anything, just let me know. And if not, I will see you all in 2 weeks for our end of discovery one. Perfect. Thanks very much, everyone. See you later. Bye.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.